Okay, so I'm not gonna lie to you. A lot of you guys know on this channel that I am more of a cherries guy compared to a peach guy. And if you guys don't know what that means, that probably means you are too young to be watching this channel. But if you do know what it means, well, prepare yourself for an insane story about my teacher that had the best pair of cherries I think I've ever seen. But obviously, before we get into the story, make sure you guys press that like button and subscribe. It seriously means a lot when you guys do. And let's just jump straight into this insane story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to a really funny, but yet kind of embarrassing story, but at the same time, a story that basically changed my life. I remember this story all starts off back in my grade 6 year. This was the first day of grade 6, and I remember I ended up walking into my school and trying to find my way around the classrooms. Obviously, middle school is a way different space compared to elementary school, because, you know, usually in elementary school, you're guided to where you're supposed to go, but in middle school, you weren't guided anywhere. You had to figure everything out yourself. It was like entering a premature high school, except everyone was more smelly, everyone was more dumb, because everyone was more unmature. That's basically sums up middle school for you guys, if you guys want me to be honest with you, for all those middle schoolers out there that are going into middle school. But if not, then it is what it is. Anyways, going on with the story though, I remember I was trying to find this one specific classroom that was for my social studies. And I remember I hated social studies, but I still needed to find my classroom because I didn't want to be late or, you know, basically get lost. And I remember as I was walking around the school trying to figure out where this classroom was, I ended up finding a grade 8 student, and I walked up to him saying, I was just curious, I don't know where this classroom is, can you like help me out? Oh yeah, little man, here, basically you want to go down the hall, and oh my goodness, you have that teacher? Wait, what? What's wrong with that teacher? Dude, that teacher is the hottest teacher at the school. You should be lucky, little man. And then afterwards, he ended up dabbing me up in the most awkward way possible. Like, I'm not even joking. I didn't know how to dab up people at the time because it wasn't really a thing, I guess, back then, but it started becoming a thing. So I kind of dabbed them up in the, I don't know, man. I almost gave him a high five. Like, it was that awkward. But going on from there, I remember afterwards, I ended up basically going towards the classroom, and I was kind of excited because he ended up saying that it was the hottest teacher at the school. And to be fair, that's a benefit for any student going into high school or middle school, to be honest. So as I walked right into the classroom and I saw the teacher, and what I saw was not a super attractive woman, it was a pregnant woman. Now you guys are probably wondering, wait a minute, the story doesn't make sense. I thought we're talking about a teacher with big cherries, not a pregnant woman. Well, let me assure you, this story will get to that point, but obviously there has to be some backstory so it makes more sense later on. Anyways, I remember when I walked in the classroom, I just sat down kind of weirded out because I didn't know why this pregnant woman was considered the most attractive woman in the school. Like, for God's sakes, she's pregnant. Not saying that pregnant women aren't attractive, but I'm not gonna lie, the stretch marks I'm not a fan of. But sorry, going on with the story, I remember when I sat down, she introduced herself, but then she ended up telling us that she was leaving. She said that she was leaving because she was about to give birth any day now, and that she was not able to teach this year. All the students were pretty sad and went, "Aw." As for me, I didn't, because I didn't know the woman. Like, this was my first time meeting her. Why do you think I'm gonna be sad about you? I don't know you. Like, I don't know why everyone was making a big deal out of it, but apparently it was. So anyways, after that, she ended up walking out, and the principal walked in with a new teacher that was some old smelly dude that couldn't say my name for the life of him. Like, I'm not joking. Instead of saying Bubba, he would be like, "Baby, baby, is he in the class? Baby." Like, it's Bubba, not Baby. I don't know how that's so complicated. You know what? Going on with the story, I remember that school year sucked, and social studies was my least favorite class. But then next year came around, and 1 year later, well, this is where things get exciting. Because I remember my grade 7 year, obviously at this time, I was more comfortable with the school. I was, you know, more like relaxed, and I was more me, I guess. Or in reality, I was just hitting puberty and realizing what my eggplant was doing at the time. But still, at this time, I was more, well, hitting puberty. And I remember when I got my sheet for the new grade 7 year of what classes I had, I saw the same name last year that I got from the same social studies teacher that ended up leaving. I remember I was really upset, and I'm like, great, I have this old smelly fart again, because I knew the teacher wasn't going to come back. But when I went to the classroom and I sat down, instantly, a hottie with a body ended up coming in, and she's like, "Hey guys, I'm back, and I'm here for the new year." I remember I looked at her, and my eyes were wide open. Remember, last year, she was just some pregnant woman. But this year, she gave birth, and that stomach fat that she got ended up going to her cherries. Like, I am not joking. More women should get pregnant if that is the magic that happens out of it. Not the baby. I meant like their cherries getting bigger. But going on with the story, I remember I was so excited, and I kept staring at her, and the whole time, I am not joking, I couldn't stop staring at them. They were huge. They were right at my face. Like, it was just there. And like, I am not joking when I say this. Every other boy in that classroom knew exactly what we were looking at. Like, we would all look at each other, and then we look straight at her. Sometimes we would take shifts like they did in Grown Ups and, you know, basically shift away. And then when we switch back, it's our shift. And then we shift away again. And it was just a back and forth thing. Obviously, throughout the school year, we kept looking at her. And obviously, one of my friends wanted to take it to the limits. I remember one time we were all sitting in the classroom and me and the guys, like we would all sit in the front as all the girls would sit in the back being like, these guys are weird. Even though we weren't weird, we were looking at a nice pair of cherries. You can't argue. You can't say anything. You're not a guy. And basically, we were like staring at her. And one of my friends decided to basically drop a pencil in the middle of her teaching. And he dropped it right in front of his desk. Like, I'm not joking, like right in front of his desk. And obviously me, I was looking at him like, wait, bro, what are you doing? This teacher ended up walking up to the pencil, bending over. And I am not joking. My friend got a full view of those cherries. At that point, me and the guys knew what we had to do. We knew what the mission was. And at that point, I remember almost every day that week, that teacher was picking up our pencils. Now you guys are probably wondering, wow, what a bunch of dumb, immature kids doing the most very gross and creepy thing. We were in middle school. What do you expect? Like, I'm sorry, do you expect more from us? Do you expect us to just get a PhD and just, just know how to do surgery on those puppies? Actually, I wish I knew how to do surgery. Oh my goodness, why wasn't I a plastic surgeon? Sorry. Going on with the story, I remember from there, basically, one time, my buddy told me it was my turn to drop the pencil. And obviously, I got my lucky pencil that day, and I ended up going into that classroom. I sat down, and right as the teacher was about to start teaching, I dropped my pencil right in front of my desk. She ended up making a comment saying, oh my goodness, like, all of you guys keep dropping your pencils. And my friend decided to take things further, where right as the teacher was bending over, and my face was getting the full view of those cherries right in front of me, he ended up grabbing the back of my head and pushing me into her cherries. Yeah, like, I am not joking. Like, imagine me sitting on a desk and him just, like, he just straight up, like, it was bad, bro. Like, I don't like head pushers, but that's insane. Not those kind of head pushers. Don't get any ideas. But going on with the story, I remember I was super like, oh, like, I'm so sorry. And instantly at that moment, she freaked out. She was super upset. She was freaked out. And I remember she ended up basically sending me and the other kid to the principal's office. I don't know why I was involved. I'm the one that got head pushed. But no, apparently we were both in trouble because I guess she found out that we were dropping the pencils on purpose, but she didn't know for what reason. And I remember when me and him went to the office, we just kept arguing back and forth saying, bro, like, why'd you do that? Dude, I wanted you to get the full experience. I got the experience. I didn't need my face in it. And yeah, it was just not fun. When we got to the principal's office, I remember he was talking to us about, basically treating women like human beings and not objects and how, we should be more mature and stuff, which is really dumb to tell to a kid because let's be real here, like, we're kids. We really don't know what we were doing. Like, I know, thinking about it now, like, obviously it's really dumb, but at the same time, it was super embarrassing that happened. And one thing led to another. My buddy ended up getting suspended for a couple days, and I had to write a handwritten apology to the teacher for shoving my face into her cherries. The more I think about it, the more dumb it is, but hey, at the end of the day, my opinion, if a girl has a nice pair of cherries, make sure you ask before putting your face in them instead of your friend pushing your face into them. So when I was in middle school, I'm not gonna lie, middle school is around the age when I started hitting puberty. And hitting puberty isn't easy for anyone because obviously you start realizing things about yourself and you start, looking at things a different way, even if it leads to cherries. But before the story starts, make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Seriously, it means a lot when you guys do. And on top of that, if you guys do want crazy stories like this live, I'm currently live on Twitch streaming and telling crazy stories just like this one. But anyways, other than that, let's get straight to this crazy story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba and welcome to a brand new story time. So today's story, like I said earlier, starts off with me back in middle school. So back when I was in middle school, I never really did the devil's tango until I want to say grade 8. But before that, I'm not gonna lie, I started hitting puberty. I started looking at things a different way and I started really looking at life in a new perspective. And let's just say I ended up realizing around that time that I was more of a cherries guy instead of a peach. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you guys are probably too young to be watching this channel. But if you do know what I'm talking about, then you agree with me, right? Like seriously, comment down below. Which one are you, peaches or cherries? Anyways, going on from there, I remember basically when I realized I was that type of person, I remember one day when I entered my school after being dropped off, I ended up going to my classroom. When I got there, I realized that we had a new teacher. Except this teacher, she had a really snarky attitude. I don't know why. She was really, how do I put this? Honestly, I can't think of any other word than snarky. She would always make like really rude comments towards the students, and honestly, she wasn't funny at all. And I remember when I went into the classroom and sat down, I remember she ended up explaining, her name was Mrs. L, and how basically she was going to be a teacher for us for only a little bit. Apparently, we needed a substitute substitute because our original teacher had like a cold or something. I have no idea. But basically she was gonna be there for a couple weeks just to, you know, help us with teaching, I guess. I don't know. What else do substitutes do other than basically sit there and just teach? So I remember when we had her, basically, she ended up basically teaching us a lot about social studies and stuff because that was the class she was taking over. But also another thing about her is that she was really, really weird. Because in some moments, and I'm not gonna lie, in the most weirdest moments, she would kind of like say really weird things to us. Like, for example, she would talk about how she had randomly 3 different divorces, and it got to the point where she even explained how for some reason she would talk about how like her kids left her and stuff. I don't know, just really stuff that are really out of pocket, and that, let's be real here, no grade 7 should be hearing about in the first place. From there though, I remember basically the whole class started to realize that none of us liked her, so we kind of just started avoiding her all in general. She started realizing that, and then she ended up saying this really weird comment saying, oh great, so now all of you guys are leaving me? Like seriously, like who do you guys think you are? Okay, you're not my husband, you're not my ex-husband, and you're not also my children. Okay, I'm here to teach you, so grow up. Okay, is what I said afterwards. Because to be honest, I had no idea what to say to that. But then what ends up happening next was even more embarrassing. I remember the next day when I entered school, one thing I realized right when I walked into the classroom was that everyone, and I mean every student, was trying to sit towards the back of the classroom to avoid basically hearing her snarky comments and basically try to get out of her peripheral vision. Which, I mean, fair enough. I'm also a person that does this a lot in classrooms because I don't want to be seen by a teacher that doesn't like me. So I remember I kind of just tried to sit towards the back, but all the seats were taken, so I ended up sitting in the front of the classroom. Preferably, that's not the seat I would like to be in, but there was no other place for me to sit. I remember I sat down and I just ended up sitting there and kind of just made a promise to myself to basically avoid all eye contact, because there's no way I was gonna let this teacher look at me straight in the eyes and basically intimidate me till my life's done. And by the way, the reason I say this is because I'm gonna be honest here, in grade 7, my confidence wasn't like maximum until like, I want to say grade 10, grade 11. So it makes sense in some sense. But going on, I remember when I sat down in front of the classroom and I was just waiting for the teacher to walk in. The teacher ends up walking in, but what she was wearing was, well, let's just say something that a teacher should not be wearing. She ended up wearing this really tight dress that was, well, red, and she started wearing red heels. She walked into the classroom, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought she was gonna film some sort of Devil's Hub video, because like this outfit that she was wearing definitely did not meet the dress code for our school. But at the same time, I always asked myself this, is the dress code also towards teachers or is it just students? Anyways, going on though, I remember basically when she walked in, the whole class, and I mean everyone in the classroom, started staring at her. We all started looking at her, and I'm not gonna lie, one thing I realized about her was that her cherries were popping. Like no joke, never seen before cleavage, just popping out like no tomorrow. Like no joke, one jumping jack and they're out. Like I don't even know, man. Like you guys should have seen it. It was insane. So I remember when she walked in, a lot of the guys actually ended up going from the back of the classroom, moving up to the front to get a better view. And since I was already in the front, well, let's just say I was already in the splash zone. Yeah, high five. I'm alone. Never mind. Going on, I remember as the class was going on and she was teaching us, all of us, and I mean every student was just staring at her cherries and her outfit. No one, and I mean no one, was actually paying attention to what she was saying, because every time she would mention something or say something, she would point out a student and be like, okay, so Timmy, can you tell me what happened? And little Timmy's just gonna be staring straight at her, going, oh yeah, like, you know, it was just pretty obvious that no guy was actually focusing on it. And it even got to the point where some girls in the classroom ended up just being super upset and leaving. Why did they leave? Well, no idea, but it will make sense later on in the story. But then for some reason, I want to say later on during class, I remember she ended up saying to the classroom, okay class, so I'm gonna get one student to come up here and I'm gonna show you guys the way that basically they ended up dancing back then. I remember when she said that, she ended up looking directly at me, and me, I'm not gonna lie, I was looking straight at her cherries. I wasn't looking at anything else. And then she ended up saying, okay Bubba, do you want to come up here? Huh? Yeah, sure, is what I ended up saying. So I ended up standing up and going up to the front of the classroom, and when I saw her, me and her, we ended up standing in front of each other, facing each other. And since she was taller than me, since I was a short kid in grade 7, my peripheral vision was directly, and I mean directly, straight to her cherries. I ended up just staring at her as she was dancing, doing this, I don't know, rain dance, I guess she was teaching about. I have no idea. And all I saw was just those cherries go going up and down like no tomorrow. And yeah, that's all I was staring at. And honestly, one thing I will say is that she definitely knew I was staring at them, because right after she ended up saying, okay, Bubba, my eyes are up here. And right at that moment, I remember I saw her hand movement to, you know, do like that weird like two-hand eyesight thing. You guys know what I'm talking about. And I looked at her and I'm like, oh, yeah. And then that's when she actually flipped out. She was super upset to that point where she said, okay, seriously, you guys are objectifying me as if you're my ex-husband. Who do you guys think you are? And right as she says that, I remember my principal ends up walking into the classroom that we had. And apparently he was called in by one of the students that was one of the girls from earlier that ended up leaving the classroom. He ended up walking in saying, okay, Mrs. L, I'm gonna need to speak to you outside, please. You know what's the funny part? 100%. My principal was checking out her chairs. There was no way he wasn't. But anyways, one thing led to another. He ended up going out the classroom with her, had a conversation about student dress code and how it basically does lead to teachers somehow. And how basically he said this word for word, you can't dress like a whore in school. Kind of crazy how that's being told to a teacher, but hey, what can I say? Back then, it is what it is. Okay, so I think all of us have had a teacher that's like really attractive. And I'm not gonna lie, there are moments in my life where I've done things to attractive teachers that I kind of regret. And obviously that leads to mostly embarrassment. But today's story is about how I got really embarrassed from this one teacher that had a massive, well, yeah, or in other words, peach. But before we get into it, make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Seriously, it means a lot when you guys do. And let's just jump straight into this. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba and welcome back to a really embarrassing story. So today's story all takes place back in my grade 10 year. Now in grade 10, I'm not gonna lie to you, around this time I was really, well, not the most healthiest person. If I had the opportunity to do the devil's tango or anything like it, I would jump at it like it was like no tomorrow. Actually, to be honest, I don't know what was wrong with me back in grade 10. Obviously, if you guys are big fans of the channel, you guys would know that a lot of the time on this channel, I would do things that are pretty risky for the average person. But I remember one time in grade 10, I was going into my social studies class and we ended up having a teacher that was, well, not originally our teacher. You see, for social studies class in grade 10, we had a teacher that was mostly an old guy and he was really annoying and pretty racist. Why was a racist guy teaching social studies? Well, I have no idea. But this one day, I remember I walked in there and it was a totally different teacher. Now, this teacher was a woman and she was really, really nice looking from the front and she had a really attractive face. But I remember when she actually stood up from her chair and actually walked up to the whiteboard, let's just say when she got up, a lot of people noticed the one thing about her that was, well, really appealing and I guess got most of the guys bricked up. And that was her peach. Now, her peach was massive. Like, I'm not joking. Like, if Humpty Dumpty wasn't sitting on the wall, it was definitely inside her. That sounds really unmature, but you guys get what I mean. This teacher had a really massive gyat. And well, to be honest, I didn't really know what to say and nor what to look at, because the whole time when she was teaching, most of the guys were looking at the whiteboard, then looking back at the gyat. And it just went back and forth to the point where, I'm not gonna lie, I think the teacher started to kind of notice that she was getting stared at in different ways. Now, for the first day, she didn't do anything. She looked at all of us and said, okay, just focus on your assignments, class, and just went back to work. But obviously, the next day, well, she was still our substitute teacher for some reason. And I remember this time when she walked up to the whiteboard, she was mostly standing as if she was not trying to turn around and show the entire class her amazing peach. And I remember most of the guys were pretty like annoyed by that. And I remember the one time when she actually ended up turning around, we ended up seeing one guy in the back of the classroom trying to take a photo of her massive peach. Yes, this was extremely creepy. And yes, the teacher was really weirded out and she did notice, because as you guys may know on iPhones, like when you take a photo of something and you accidentally do something like this, it's really embarrassing. So obviously at this point, I guess my teacher was really annoyed and she got to the point where she actually ended up taking everyone's phones in the classroom, even the girls' phones. I have no idea why. I guess she was just trying to make it so everyone had an even chance not taking a photo of her. Now, this is where the story gets worse and worse, because I remember the next day, our substitute teacher ended up coming back into the classroom. Same woman with the massive, well, peach. And she walked in there and this time she was wearing something really baggy, meaning that she was wearing like a really big jacket and like to the point where she was kind of wearing like a dress kind of look where, to be honest, you couldn't really recognize the gap. And me at this point, I think this was the only time when she was here where I actually ended up paying attention to class. As creepy as that sounds, but let's be real here, I was a teenager. All teenagers are creepy that way. But, you know, as a teen, I guess this was the only time where I was actually able to focus into the class and things ended up, you know, being better until, well, something really bad happened. Where I remember one of the students ended up walking up in front of the class when she was turned around writing on the whiteboard. And this student decided to basically step on the teacher's dress dress. And, well, let's just say it ended up ripping because she was so panicked of why a student was behind her. She freaked out, went, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing?" And her whole bottom half dropped. Yeah, let's just say everyone got a full view of the gap. And, let's just say a lot of guys ended up taking pictures and sharing it around school. Now, obviously, our teacher was really mad about this. She was really mad to the point where she did not want to come back. But obviously, sometimes when you have a job and you don't want to do it, you still got to do it. That's just the way life works. Everyone has to work for a reason. Did the guy get in trouble for, you know, stepping on the dress? Obviously, but he claimed it was an accident. So I guess, you know, a slap on the wrist was all he got from the principal. Now, knowing this and knowing how much the teacher was basically being, I guess, harassed in a way, obviously at this point, I thought it would be cool if I just, you know, ended up not being that guy. Meaning that I kind of just resisted looking, and I kind of just ended up basically being the only student in the class where I tried basically paying attention other than the girls. But me as a guy, I remember I would put up my hand up for questions and I would, you know, try to be a good student because obviously at this point I felt really bad. Everyone knew that the only thing good about this teacher was her massive peach. So me trying to be Mr. Nice Guy, I remember one time after class that day of me being really good to her and being responsible, I guess I would say, she ended up basically telling me to stay after class. Now, when she asked me to stay after class, I was really confused. In my mind, I was going, wait, why does she want to see me? What did I do? I was being good. At least I thought I was. Wait, she's talking about the other days? Wait, why is she bringing me in? And me thinking I was in severe trouble, I remember all the students ended up leaving the classroom, and then the teacher walked up to me in front of my desk. She looked at me and said, "Bubba, I have a question." Yeah, what's up? Are you, gay by any chance? I remember I looked at her with my eyes wide open. I'm like, wait, what? You think I'm gay? Wait, what? What? Ew, no. Yes, I did say ew, but remember, this was a time where, like, the LGBTQ community wasn't as, I guess, loud. But going on with the story, I remember she ended up saying, "Oh, well, like, I don't know, like, you just seem like you're not, like, attracted to me like the other students. And I was just hoping if you could explain why they're acting, like, so immature." At this point, I remember I looked at her with my head kind of tilted saying, "Well, you do realize you're in a high school, right? Obviously, all guys and everyone's hitting puberty. It's like middle schoolers, but to the max." She ends up laughing and basically talking to me, and one thing led to another. I remember she ended up basically, like, you know, kind of in a way, I guess, flirting with me. I found it really odd, and I found it really kind of weirded out because at first you thought I was gay, but then now you're flirting with me. Like, it makes no sense. And also, I'm a student. You're the teacher. Now, at this point, I didn't really know what to say, and obviously I was being kind of nervous, and I was like, you know what? Is there anything else you need? And she ended up basically sending me on my way. Now, when I left the classroom, I remember I was really weirded out, and I had some friends waiting for me outside of the classroom, and when they heard that I stayed in there with that teacher, all of them came up to me asking me questions like, "Yo, what happened? Did you see her yacht even more? Yo, did she, like, show you some of the special stuff again?" And I was like, no, like, it was nothing like that, when in reality it was something like that. Now, me going to school the next day hoping that my normal teacher would come back, the old guy that was racist, apparently he wasn't coming back until next week because, well, I guess he found out that his wife has cancer or something. I have no idea. And basically me going back into the school, I was kind of weirded out because I ended up seeing the teacher right away in the hallway in the morning. Now, in the morning when I saw her in the hallway, I remember she kind of like pointed her finger at me, telling me to come closer to her. And I walked up to her saying, "Oh, like, yeah, what's going on?" She looked at me and said, "Bubba, I have a question for next week. I was planning on, like, doing this, like, project assignment for everyone to do, but at the same time, though, I want to, like, get your advice on if it's good or not." I ended up saying, like, "Well, what kind of project is it?" And she said she wanted to show me, but apparently the project wasn't at school. It was at her house. Now, I thought, you know, she was gonna probably, like, bring it the next day like any normal teacher would, but apparently this teacher was so persistent on me coming over to her house where she said, "I mean, if you come over and, like, look at it at my place, I'll just, you know, give you an A and you don't have to do the assignment." At this moment, I didn't know what to say. In my mind, I was thinking, well, an instant A would be really good, and on top of that, my parents would be super proud of me to the point where they would buy me a new video game. But at the same time, though, in my mind, though, I knew that going to her house might be the biggest risk ever. So me trying to, like, you know, really think it through, I remember one of my friends were kind of like near the lockers where me and this teacher were having a conversation, and he was freaking out at the entire thing. Like, he was like giggling, laughing, and my phone was literally vibrating over and over because he was freaking out at me saying, "Bro, just go to her house." I remember when the teacher walked away, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do, and I was really weirded out on why this teacher liked me so much. And then on top of that, my friend did walk up to me saying, like, "Yo, this teacher wants to smash. Like, just do it. She wants to do the devil's tango." But obviously, knowing my past history with me doing the devil's tango with my teachers, obviously it wasn't a good idea. I remember the day went on, and, you know, social studies class came up. The one that, you know, the teacher with the massive yacht was teaching. And I remember I walked in there and I sat in the back of the class to kind of like avoid any conflict or any ideas that I might like her back. You know, I was just trying to be like that, like, mature person, I guess, in a way. And I remember when I sat in the back of the classroom, the teacher stood up literally right in front of me and said, "Oh, Bubba, you should sit in the front. I need you for, like, some examples." those examples is what I said. And then I remember I sat in the front of the classroom because she told me to, and you can't say no to the teacher apparently. And when I sat in front of the classroom, I looked at her and I was basically, you know, going on with class. But then there was one moment where she did something very, well, unreal, to the point where I remember this teacher with the massive gap looked at me and said, "Can you answer this question for me?" I ended up walking up to the board, and right as I walked up to the board, I remember she kind of like bent over in a way because like apparently she dropped the marker and her whole peach was against my well, I would say more, but I can't because YouTube demonetization is a real thing and I don't want to get in trouble. But let's just say, yeah, I felt that whole thing against me. Now at this point I didn't know what to say, and a lot of people in the classroom were like freaking out, saying like, no way, like, oh my goodness, like Bubba's gonna get some. And me being the type of person to have a fight or flight kind of reaction, and me also being super embarrassed, I ended up running out of the classroom. I ran out of there so fast to the point where I was just not having it, and I was so weirded out and I was so like nervous to the point where I ran to the bathroom and I sat in there for like 20 minutes. After 20 minutes went by, I remember I was called down to the office because I wasn't showing back up to class, and obviously I do have a record of being in the office a lot since, you know, high school wasn't my strongest suit. And when I went to the office, I remember the principal was asking me why I wasn't in class, and I had to explain to him everything. I explained how this teacher had a massive gyat and how everyone was just so appealed by her, and basically I ended up showing him the photos that everyone started taking because, well, everyone posted a photo of her peach. And long story short, let's just say the teacher ended up not being our substitute teacher anymore. But hey, what can I say? Maybe if I continue talking to her, maybe I can pull her now. Anyways, guys, that is basically it for today's story. Make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Seriously, it means a lot when you guys do. And like I always say, follow for more embarrassing stories. Peace out, guys.